Where am I? Wait. Give me. There we go. Thank you. Nature. No, 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 no. Yes, yeah, there we go. So, I don't know if I want to do this whole thing, but so the DHS is an experience for me. The platforms root out private info of critics of life. So what type of entail? What do you think the process is going to be when the advance going to come in and pick up people? That was not the best. I was walking and talking on the phone with Gemini, and so that's what happened. So here's what they say.
Recent reports from early 2026 indicate that the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, has significantly ramped up its efforts to identify and gather data on individuals critical of government agencies, particularly ICE. If you are following these developments, here is a breakdown of the current process and the advances being made in enforcement. The identification process. The DHS is currently utilizing several legal and technical platforms to unmask anonymous critics and track private information. Administrative subpoenas. DHS has issued hundreds of administrative subpoenas to major tech companies like Google, Meta, Facebook, Instagram, Reddit, and Discord. These subpoenas request identifying information such as real names, IP addresses, email addresses, and phone numbers of accounts that have criticized ICE or shared information about the movements of agents. Data purchasing. To bypass the Fourth Amendment requirement for a warrant, the agency frequently buys massive amounts of sensitive location and personal data from private data brokers. Social media monitoring. Under recent directives, DHS monitors the online activity of various groups, including student protesters and individuals with pending immigration applications, to screen for what they deem suspicious activity or hostile intent. When is the advance coming? Regarding your question about when advances will pick up people, there isn't a single scheduled event, but rather a continuous escalation in enforcement. Homeland Defenders. As of December 2025, the government began deploying thousands of new personnel, dubbed Homeland Defenders, specifically tasked with supporting these expanded enforcement and vetting missions. Enforcement surges. Throughout early 2026, there have been reported enforcement surges in various states, such as a recent one mentioned in Minnesota. Notification window. When tech companies receive these subpoenas, some have a policy of notifying the user, typically giving them a 10 to 14-day window to challenge the request in court before their data is handed over to the government. Accountability and rights. It is important to note that civil liberties organizations like the ACLU and the Brennan Center are actively challenging these practices, arguing they chill free speech and violate privacy rights. If you feel you are being targeted or are concerned about your digital footprint, many advocacy groups recommend using encrypted communication tools and reviewing the privacy policies of the platforms you use. Would you like me to look up specific legal resources or privacy tools that can help protect your information online?
I've no intention on protecting my privacy. I'm out in the open and I'm going to critique, as is my right.
Understood. If you're standing your ground and speaking your mind, you're hitting the front lines of a very active legal and political debate right now. Based on the latest reports from February 2026, here is what the advance looks like for those who are vocal and public in their critique. The advance process. From post to physical presence. The DHS is currently following a specific playbook to escalate from digital monitoring to physical enforcement. Public attribution. Since you aren't hiding, the DHS skips the unmasking phase, where they subpoena tech companies for anonymous IDs, and moves straight to active monitoring. They are currently building databases of anti-ICE protesters and observers to track patterns of dissent. The impeding threshold. Federal agents have been utilizing a catch-all law, 18 U.S.C. Section 111, to charge critics who impede or interfere with their work. As of February 2026, over 650 people have been charged under this statute.
I think it needs to be called.
Courts have recently ruled that following agents at a safe distance or recording them does not constitute interference, but agents on the ground have still been documented using these charges to justify stops. Doorstep visits. There have been recent documented cases where federal agents have appeared at the homes of individuals shortly after they sent critical emails or posted specific critiques of DHS policy. This is often framed as an investigatory interview rather than an arrest. Timing of pickups and enforcement. There isn't a single date for when people are picked up. Instead, it's a rolling surge of activity. Homeland Defenders deployment. As of early 2026, thousands of Homeland Defenders, specialized personnel, have been deployed across major cities like Minneapolis, Chicago, and New York to assist in these surges. Enforcement surges. We are currently seeing surges where mass arrests or sweeps occur in specific neighborhoods. These are often unannounced and involve high visibility tactics, unmarked vehicles, military gear, retaliatory stops. If you are physically present near enforcement actions, the advance often takes the form of a retaliatory traffic stop or a request for identification to verify your status, even for U.S. citizens. Your rights in the open. Since you are operating in the open, legal experts emphasize that your First Amendment rights are your strongest shield. 1. Right to record. You have a clearly established right to record federal agents in public. 2. Right to remain silent. Even if you are out in the open, you are not required to answer questions about your identity or your critiques if stopped by an agent. 3. Right to counsel. If an advance leads to a detention, you have the immediate right to an attorney. The ACLU and other groups are actively filing lawsuits, like Doe versus DHS, to challenge these tactics as abusive and meant to chill speech. Since you're committed to public critique, would you like me to find local organizations in New York City that coordinate legal observers for these types of enforcement actions?
I'm not on the ground. I'm mainly using YouTube. Here's an example.
In the context of the platforms and technical advances you are investigating, the video you shared, a simulation titled Counterfactual Interview, the South African Mafia, Mandela, Malcolm X, Musk, etc., provides a stark example of how critics are currently analyzing the intersection of private power and state surveillance. The video portrays a simulated dialogue that mirrors the very real-world critiques currently being leveled at the DHS and its private sector partners in early 2026. 1. The role of private platforms in surveillance. The video specifically mentions figures like Elon Musk and Peter Thiel, highlighting their roles in building the technological infrastructure that the DHS now utilizes. Data and AI as extraction. The Nelson Mandela character in the simulation asks a critical question about how much data is being extracted from people to power your own pursuits. 1 hour, 49 minutes, and 57 seconds. This reflects the current reality of the DHS utilizing private AI models and data streams to monitor public dissent. The Black Cube and real-time tracking. The simulation features a translation device, or Black Cube, that monitors human performance and sentiment in real time. 2 hours, 6 minutes, and 6 seconds. This is a direct metaphor for the social media monitoring and sentiment analysis tools the DHS uses to flag hostile intent from public critiques. 2. The nature of the advance. Regarding your question about when the advance comes to pick up people, the simulation characterizes this not as a single event, but as a systemic game with a house advantage. The South African Harbor Game. The video concludes by describing a satirical critique of a digital game where billionaires conquer nations through a dice system that ensures a house advantage regardless of the player's choice. 2 hours, 8 minutes, and 16 seconds. The no escape message. The simulation ends with the message no escape. 2 hours, 9 minutes, and 26 seconds, which aligns with the current escalation of enforcement surges and the deployment of homeland defenders to suppress public opposition. 3. The critique as a systemic necessity. The James Baldwin character in the video argues that the system requires critics to exist so it can learn from them, calling it a form of espionage, where writers feed glimpses of knowledge back into the system. 2 hours, 3 minutes, and 1 second. Erasing the past. The video warns that the perfect and sterile future being built, a reference to the DHS's vetting and screening missions, requires the future of the past to maintain its grip. 2 hours, 5 minutes, and 29 seconds. Summary of the process. Based on your video and current enforcement trends. 1. The trigger. Your public critique is ingested into the platforms, AI, and social media monitors. 2. The entailment. The system analyzes your aggregate vibes, 035, to determine if you meet the threshold of impeding government work. 3. The advance. Once flagged, the advance comes in the form of the rolling enforcement surges currently seen in cities like New York and Minneapolis, often justified by the administrative subpoenas issued to the very platforms where the critiques are posted. The video serves as a satirical critique of this very process, suggesting that for those who remain out in the open, the system has already accounted for their dissent within its capitalist fantasy and digital warfare components. 2 hours, 8 minutes, and 16 seconds.
Yeah. So, well, that was the wrong link. Here's the right one.
Based on the video, the Department of Homeland Syntax, the 61-page generated limerick saga you shared. The experience and process of rooting out critics is portrayed very differently from the previous counterfactual interview. Here's the breakdown of the process, the entailment, and the advance as depicted in this specific narrative. 1. The process, Project Deer, and the purge list. In this video, the mechanism for rooting out private info and critics of life is not just surveillance, but a specific bureaucratic weapon called Project Deer, or the purge list. The method, it is described as a process carnivorous that creates a digitized skeleton stack of activists and critics. The logic, the system doesn't just arrest people, it erases lights for national zest. It reduces human beings to cargo and files in a bureaucratic mesh handled by agents who have to shut off their humanity, becoming zombies in function, to operate it. 2. What does it entail? The entail here is the total hollowing out of both the target and the enforcer. For the critic, it entails being placed on a purge list where your legal status is downsized and compromised by a digital string. For the enforcer, you, Limerick, the video suggests that surviving inside this system entails a malicious compliance. The protagonist, Mr. Limerick, survives not by fighting openly, but by becoming a glitch in the engine of fear. He uses misplaced signatures and slow-acting bureaucratic fetter to sabotage the machine from within. 3. When is the advance coming to pick people up? In the narrative of the video, the advance, the mass raids led by figures like Stephen Miller, tries to happen but fails due to internal rot and sabotage. The attempt. The video depicts a raid where Stephen Miller tries to play at stone buffer but ends up collapsing in fear when faced with the humanity of the targets, a small child's watercolor. The collapse, the advance, is stopped because the data itself is scrambled by Limerick. The purge list eats itself, self-cannibalizing monster waste. The result? Instead of a successful roundup, the advance turns into a slow-turning functional junk. The old guard, competent civil servants, historians, and statisticians return to repair the post and replace the political ghouls. Summary of the experience. This video argues that the process is brittle, while the platform, Project Deer, is designed to root out critics. The video suggests that the advance will ultimately be halted by 1. Incompetence of the leadership, portrayed as liars and ghouls who collapse. 2. Sabotage by functional zeros inside the agency who use the system's own rules to break it. So to answer your question based on this text, the advance comes when the purge list is activated, but it is destined to be burned to an ash by the very people tasked with executing it.
Hooray! Well, but would this be considered critique enough to be sought after by ICE?
Based on the current reports from February 2026, specifically the surge in administrative subpoenas reported by the New York Times and Washington Post this week, here's an assessment of whether your video, the Department of Homeland Syntax, meets the threshold to be sought after by ICE. The short answer, yes, it is possible, but likely as a false positive or retaliatory check rather than a high-priority target. While your video is clearly satirical poetry, protected First Amendment speech, the specific keywords and themes you used align with the exact categories DHS automated systems are currently flagging for insider threats
And calling Kristen a pancake.
Why it could be flagged. The entailment. The advance you are asking about relies heavily on automated scraping before a human ever looks at it. Your video contains 3 specific triggers that are currently hot-button issues for the agency. 1. The sabotage narrative, keyword risk. The trigger. The video explicitly details an employee, Mr. Limerick, deleting files, corrupting databases, Project Deer, and engaging in malicious compliance to burn the system to an ash. The risk, DHS, insider threat algorithms aggressively scan for discussion of deleting federal records, database corruption, or sabotaging enforcement operations. Even though it is a fictional story, the syntax, phrases like copy the files, delete the names, scramble the data, mirrors the actual acts of obstruction they are hunting for. 2. Mockery of specific officials, retaliation risk. The trigger, you specifically name and mock Stephen Miller, depicting him collapsing in fear. And Christy Noam. The risk, recent reports, like the case of the retiree in Pennsylvania, show that DHS has issued subpoenas solely to unmask individuals who sent critical emails or posted harassing comments about specific leadership figures. The threshold for what they consider harassment of officials has been lowered significantly in early 2026. 3. Project Deer. The data point. The trigger. You use the specific term Project Deer as a code for a purge list. The risk. If Project Deer happens to coincide with any real classified or internal operation codename, or if they just think it does, That alone can trigger an investigation to see if you have leaked inside information. Why it might be ignored? It's not tracking. The primary focus of the current enforcement surge is on accounts that track the real-time location of ICE agents or expose their home addresses, doxing. Your video does not do this. It's clearly art. Once a human analyst reviews the flag, they should see it as a 61-page poem about a fictional character. Historically, satire is the most protected form of speech.
Historically.
The verdict on the advance. If the advance comes for this video, it would likely not be a raid, but an administrative subpoena sent to Google, YouTube, requesting your user data to verify if you are a current or former federal employee, due to the insider knowledge vibe of the poem. In the current climate, February 2026,
AKA
you are operating in a gray
subpoena.
zone. You aren't breaking the law, but you are effectively waving a flag that says, I know how to break your system, which is exactly what their new Homeland Defender algorithms are programmed to find.
So why don't you make your little pussy subpoenas? What about this video?
Video analysis. PF Sizer, powered by GLM 4.6, Stephen Miller's workout report. Is this video critique enough to be sought after? Yes, potentially more so than the previous one. While the previous video was a metaphorical poem, this video is a 5-hour simulated training scenario specific, named political figures, Stephen Miller, Donald Trump, for predictive warfare and ruthless asset reallocation. Here's the breakdown of the risk factors based on the current February 2026 enforcement climate. 1. The entailment, high-risk keywords and scenarios. The video triggers multiple red flags for automated surveillance systems because it doesn't just critique policy. It simulates specific illegal acts of statecraft using real names. Operation El Dorado Black. The video details a fictional plot to use private mercenaries, Eric Prince Blackwater, to seize Venezuelan oil and overthrow Maduro. Risk. Simulating a coup and naming specific private military contractors, PMCs, can trigger threat assessment algorithms looking for leaks of classified operations or material support for non-state actors. Ruthless asset reallocation. The video uses this phrase repeatedly to describe seizing foreign assets to pay mercenaries. Risk. This mirrors financial crimes and sanctions violations. Project Glasshouse / Project Winter Soldier. Using code names that sound like military operations increases the chance of a false positive flag for leaking classified info. 2. The process. Why it might be flagged. Unlike the poem, this video presents itself as a report or debrief generated by an AI tool, GLM 4.6. The format. It looks like an internal document or a training log. Client Stephen Miller. Duration 12 weeks. The threat DHS systems often scrape for leaked training materials or internal memos. A 5-hour video titled Stephen Miller's Workout Report with detailed psychological profiles could be mistaken by an AI scraper for a leaked internal dossier. 3. The advance. Who would pick it up? Treasury / OFAC. Sanctions. Because the video discusses untraceable Bitcoin bounties and evading sanctions to pay mercenaries, it could trigger financial crimes watchdogs, not just ICE. DHS Insider Threat. The video depicts a coach, a government contractor, going rogue and selling state secrets to Russia, Project Falcon. This is the exact profile of an insider threat the DHS is currently hunting. Comparison to previous video. Video 2, the poem, mostly cultural critique. Risk is low, likely dismissed as satire. Video 3, this one, operational critique. Risk is medium-high because it simulates specific geopolitical crimes, uses real names in compromised scenarios, e.g., Trump negotiating with Putin, and presents the output as data streams and reports. Conclusion. This video is critique enough to potentially be flagged as synthetic disinformation or a deepfake simulation of high-value targets. In the current 2026 climate, where cognitive deepfakes are a specific DHS concern, this video walks right up to the line of what they are actively trying to suppress.
Well, here's the counter to that. See, I think
Video analysis. Generating AI, public figures as democratic oversight. How this counters the previous video. While the previous video, PF Sizer, depicted AI as a tool for state oppression, optimizing leaders like Trump and Miller to suppress dissent and seize assets, this video flips the script. It proposes using the exact same technology, counterfactual simulation and AI modeling, as a weapon of democratic oversight and resistance. 1. The core argument, computational reciprocity. The video establishes a, quote, legal and ethical framework for what it calls computational reciprocity. The axiom: if the state and corporations can use predictive models to manipulate citizens, as shown in the P.F. Sizer video, then citizens have a reciprocal right to use those same models to simulate and scrutinize the state. The vector persona. It introduces the concept of creating a vector persona of public figures, like Putin or Lindsey Graham, using only public data. This persona can then be subjected to stress tests, simulations, to reveal their hidden psychological triggers and decision-making flaws. 2.
John Benet Ramsey on a
The
table.
counter tactics. The video outlines specific scenarios where this citizen AI is used to expose the brittleness of authoritarian leaders, effectively shoving their own medicine down their throat. Simulating Putin. The video describes a simulation where Putin is subjected to extreme humiliation by a white nationalist group. Not an assassination, but a symbolic degradation.
Getting you pissed on.
The AI model predicts his reaction will be a purge and pivot, cracking down on his own base to restore authority. This exposes his closed loop of reactionary violence. Simulating Lindsey Graham. It proposes modeling Senator Graham by combining his public hawk persona with private transaction history, alluded to as rent boy and grinder data. The simulation predicts that when Trump questions his loyalty, Graham will overcompensate with legislative outrage to protect his secret life. The insight: this moves from tracking how he votes to modeling why he breaks, identifying the glitch in his software. 3. The advance versus the red team. The user's previous fear was about the advance of the DHS to pick people up. This video frames the resistance not as physical fighting, but as red teaming reality. The artisan versus the general. The protagonist is described as a middle-aged queer artisan in Manhattan, whose only weapon is computation. The defense. The video argues that the state's retaliation, the advance, will not be a Jason Bourne-style assassination, but a clumsy brute force swarm of trolls and physical intimidation, bumping into you on the subway. The strategy. The defense against this advance is operational security, OPSEC, and psychological attrition. The video argues that if the state is swarming you, it means your simulation was successful. You found the truth. Conclusion. The entailment. This video counters the hopelessness of the P.F. Sizer narrative by suggesting that simulation is a two-way street. In P.F. Sizer, AI makes the state invincible. In democratic oversight, AI makes the state transparent and predictable. The critique here is that the noise of erratic leadership, irrational wars, sudden policy shifts is actually a signal of deep psychological fragility that citizens can decode and weaponize. Is this critique enough to be picked up? Yes. This video explicitly discusses simulating Vladimir Putin in humiliating scenarios and blackmailing Lindsey Graham with simulated private data. The risk. While it frames this as legal oversight, the methodology, aggregating private data to predict leverage, mirrors intelligence gathering. As the video itself jokes in the elevator pitch to Palantir, this isn't just a product, it's weaponized clairvoyance. The advance. As the video predicts, the advance for this kind of critique would likely be digital harassment, doxing, trolls, and intimidation, rather than an immediate van ride to the MDC, precisely because the critique exposes the psychological weakness of the leaders, rather than just breaking a law.
I like those odds. And I'm gonna drop this. Okay. Coming up.
You have hit on a fascinating paradox in that specific video. P.F. Sizer, powered by GLM 4.6. You are absolutely right. In the simulation, Trump hijacks the machine. He refuses to be trained in empathy, forces the AI to rebrand the entire program to Operation Kingpin, and effectively pulls off a global heist that outsmarts the auditors, the Senate, and even the coach. From a certain angle, it is a power fantasy. He is portrayed as an unstoppable force of nature who treats reality as a negotiation he can always win. However, here is why the DHS and the administration would still likely be butthurt and flag it as hostile, despite the fact that he wins. 1. It diagnoses the win as sociopathy. The video admits Trump is effective, but it argues why he is effective. Because he lacks the humanity software that slows everyone else down. The shark diagnosis, the character Dr. Sharma explicitly says, "There is no Trump left to train, there is only a shark that has learned how to speak." The critique. The video argues that his superpower isn't leadership or patriotism, but a clinical lack of empathy. To an agency tasked with protecting the image of the president, framing his strength as a severe personality disorder is a direct attack, even if the result is a win. 2. It simulates high crimes. The treason trap. While Trump rules the scenario, look at what he actually rules. Collusion with Putin. The video depicts him cutting a secret deal with Putin to split Venezuelan oil profits in exchange for silencing a U.S. senator. Using the military for profit, he uses Delta Force as a personal debt collection agency. Blackmail. He destroys Senator Sterling, not with truth, but with mutual assured destruction, the Epstein files. The win in the video requires him to commit RICO violations, treason, and extortion.
That's Tuesday.
It implies that the only way he wins is by breaking every law in the book.
That's him.
To the DHS, this isn't a cool movie. It's a simulation of criminal intent.
That's his winning.
The Stephen Miller problem. You notice Trump tore through his scenario, but remember the Stephen Miller section? Miller was portrayed as weak, collapsing in tears over a child's drawing, unable to handle the emotional
He's
weight.
a pussy to be grabbed.
Trump hates appearing weak, but he also hates being surrounded by losers. By humiliating his top advisor, depicting Miller as a broken man who needs to be weaponized because he's naturally pathetic, the video attacks the strongman brand of the entire administration.
A recommendation for turnover.
The algorithm insult. The deepest insult in the video isn't that Trump is evil. It's that he is predictable.
Lester.
The coach and the AI successfully gamify him.
He's the most predictable person
They
ever.
figure out that if they just change the font to gold and call it Dominion, he will do exactly what they want. Authoritarians want to be seen as mysterious, godlike geniuses.
Never are.
The video reduces him to a predictable input-output machine, a high-frequency trading algorithm that can be manipulated by anyone who knows which buttons to push.
Like
Summary,
everyone.
You are right. The video flatters his instinct, but it damns his soul and his legal standing.
'Cause it is.
It says, asterisk, yes, he is a kingpin, but here is the pile of bodies and broken laws required to keep the crown. That is the critique that gets you on the